Everybody, it's your girl, Miss Public Info here on Cast and Court TV, here with the latest and greatest and sometimes hated updates of your most high profile cases going on around the country. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about two cases going on. We're going to talk about Little Nas X and why he was found wandering around the streets of LA just last night on Ventura Boulevard looking like a scene out of the Five Heartbeats. Okay. And for those of you who know the Five Heartbeats like I do, backwards and forwards, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then we're going to talk about Apollonia. Yes, that Apollonia from Purple Rain, the Lakes of Minnetonka, Apollonia. Yes, that Apollonia. She is currently suing who? None other than Prince's, the purple one's, estate for the use of her name, Apollonia. So let's get into it and let's get going. Now, this Little Nas X case is really interesting because what I don't understand is I don't understand how in the world, why in the world he was seen um wandering around the streets of Los Angeles, um, just sort of like in a daze. Now, what is being reported is that he has been arrested. He's been arrested, but before he's been booked, he's actually been hospitalized because they believe that he was experiencing a possible overdose. Now, they haven't said what the overdose was or anything like that, but he was wandering the streets of LA in his underwear and I believe boots. So let's also show you that photo as well. I'm gonna go back to that photo, go to that photo so you can see what I'm talking about here, courtesy of the New York Post. Um, and he essentially was just found wandering around, nearly naked. You see, he has some sort of street cone fixture on top of his head. He's, had to be sent to a hospital, but before um, they determined that he needed to go to a hospital, they actually arrested him and they arrested him for criminal battery on a peace officer. So let's get into this courtesy of People Magazine as to what exactly happened. So I'm pausing that for a minute while I get into this. Now, he was reportedly arrested for the alleged assault of a police officer after law enforcement have responded to calls that he was out on Ventura Boulevard, walking the streets naked. Of course, we see in the photo that he wasn't stark naked. He had on underwear and some shoes. Now, a spokesperson for the LAPD says that he described him rather that the reports rather described him as a man who was nude in the street in the 1100 block of Ventura Boulevard. This was just before 6 a.m. Today. So this was this morning. Little Nas X actually went on to batter the officer, they say. So he was booked for battery of a peace officer. And then he was taken to the hospital for treatment for, I guess, a potential treatment of an overdose. And then they say once he's released, he's going to be charged. And then, going through the booking process. Now, the LAPD did not identify him as Little Nas X, but TMZ reported that it was Little Nas X who was walking down the 1100 block of Ventura Boulevard around 4 a.m. wearing nothing but underwear and boots. And they also reported that, multiple calls came through the LAPD for a possible overdose of Little Nas X. So they weren't, the LAPD is not, confirming any of these calls, but they are saying that they did send him to the hospital. So that can kind of be indicative of the fact that this probably was a potential overdose situation, in which case Little Nas X was very lucky because we've seen several overdose cases where people don't get that lucky and they just find them already deceased. His reps aren't saying anything right now, so we'll have to wait if there's further notice on anything of that nature. But battery here in the state of California is a very serious criminal offense. It involves, excuse me, willfully and offensively touching a peace officer while obviously they're trying to do their job. This could be a misdemeanor or felony. It's not an automatic felony, but there are escalating penalties that go along with that. This could look like jail time. It could look like prison time. It could look like fines. It just depends on what kind of, or if any, injury occurred with the peace officer. I would imagine since Little Nas X was probably under the influence that there was um, a little bit of a scuffle, of a struggle, simply because he was not in his right mind. Now, you also, for education, and those of you who might be wondering, what constitutes battery of a police officer. So these are things like offensive touching. This could be really just you touching an officer while they're doing their job and just you putting your hand on them. And that could be offensive touching, touching them in an offensive way, could be in an inappropriate way, could be a sexual way, could be, a violent way. Um, and then also touching the person while they're officially on duty. So there's a difference in touching and offensively touching someone who happens to be a police officer versus offensively touching an officer while they're on duty. And then third component of that is that it must be a willful act, that the contact must be willful and not an accidental act. So that's what constitutes a battery on a peace officer, in case those of you were wondering. But I am just, horrified by this photo that we're looking at, because it is, quite sad to sort of see his descent, because this is essentially what this is, a descent. This is a photo, obviously, taken by TMZ. This was taken at 4 a.m. local time. The police didn't get there till around 6 a.m. because it took some time for these calls to come in. But yeah, this was taken. He was roaming the streets of Los Angeles around 4 a.m. Local time here in Los Angeles this morning, wearing cowboy boots, his signature cowboy boot look that we've seen him wear a million times, and just his underwear. And it was reported again that he was, running around nude. Obviously, he's not completely nude, but this is considered, not appropriately dressed, obviously. Now, when I worked on I think it was the Billboard Music Awards a few years ago, I ran into Little Nas X. I was running our press room at the time, and he was performing on the show, I believe, and it was sort of like at the height of Old Town Road. And one of the things I noticed about him, obviously, he's been very, open about his sexuality. He's from, I believe, North Carolina. He's, not someone who was brought up in the spotlight, is what I mean. And one of the things I noticed about him is that when I was back there, obviously everyone's working and we're just trying to make sure the press room, is the way it needs to be. But he was very sort of, I noticed that he was very introverted. If he wasn't, out in the public eye, sort of performing or doing an active interview. He seemed pretty introverted, like he was sort of, some people have like a protective shell around themselves because they're not very, familiar with their surroundings. Now, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing it up because, everyone doesn't handle fame in a great way. You know what I mean? He's 26 years old, so he's a baby. I'm old enough to be his mom. So that's why I'm referring to him as a baby. And so he is not probably not used to, I mean, he's been famous for a while now, but he's not used to this sort of, sort of attention. Now, for the last few years, he hasn't really been at the height of his success, but he's still someone, if you say Lil Nas X, people know exactly who that is. And I think that, the fame catches up to people. There's much more famous celebrities than himself who have gotten caught up in this sort of fame world, and they end up, taking copious amounts of drugs, surrounding themselves with people that they ordinarily would not have any exposure to, and things of that nature. And this also, more than the five heartbeats, this really reminds me of when Martin Lawrence, when he was married to Patricia Southall, was, waving or brandishing a gun in the middle of the streets in Los Angeles, where he had a mental breakdown. And you saw at the time Patricia, go to get him, sort of like get him help, the help that he needed. And he literally had a mental breakdown. This was a little bit after the Martin show ended. And it was just really about, the fact that the fame got to him. And I'm just wondering with Little Nas X if that was the situation here, that the fame has gotten to him. It's too much for him. It's something that he's not able to sort of keep up with, or he needs a break. We all need a break from whatever the monotony or the excitement of our lives might be here and there. So I just wonder if that's what was going on with him there. So we'll stay tuned and keep you updated on the Little Nas X of it all. But very disturbing to see him with this in this photo taken by Page Six, or on the Page Six website. But this is a TMZ photo. Okay, now. Apollonia. So you guys probably remember Apollonia. Um, just she's basically synonymous with Prince. So unlike a Sheila E, who has her own career in terms of in the spotlight, several albums, someone who is, a killer percussionist, and we just know Sheila E is Sheila E. Apollonia is a little different. When you say the name Apollonia, her name is pretty much synonymous with Prince. It is. It's synonymous with Prince. There isn't anything wrong with that. But the problem now stands that Prince's estate, this is all according to Apollonia and according to court documents filed in her new lawsuit against Prince's estate, that his estate is attempting to steal her name. Now, Apollonia's given name is actually Apollonia. Her name is Apollonia is her middle name, but her actual given name, so I can recall, I have to refresh my own memory here. Um, her entire name is Patricia Apollonia Quatero. That is her given name. And so she is saying that Prince's estate is trying to steal the use of her name, that she has gone to, and I'm looking over here at my notes as well, guys, so I might look over to the side, but that she is going to trademark her name, and that Princess Estate is fighting her on this. And she's stating that there is only one Apollonia, that there is not another Apollonia. She's saying that, excuse me, she's saying that Paisley Park is infringing on her trademark rights to her own name. And she's alleging that they're attempting to steal it by challenging her trademark rights, which she says she has already used professionally for 40 years. Now, in the lawsuit that was filed here in Los Angeles, she states that she has legally trademarked and consistently, used the name Apollonia um, for used the name Apollonia for entertainment purposes for over 4 decades. She says that the estate, however, has been seeking to cancel her trademark registrations through the United States Patent and Trademark Office and the TTAB. And she's claiming that Prince approved and encouraged her, even. She said he personally encouraged her, approved her to use her name throughout her career, to sort of make use of her name. Now, the estate's challenge, and she's saying that the challenge is unfair. And she also argues that any claims related to decades old contracts um, are past the statute of limitations. So in essence, if the estate is hinging this all of this on the fact that she, agreed that they own the use of her name for a particular project, it could be, let's just say, Purple Rain, for instance, that they have surpassed the limit of the statute of limitations, and that those contracts, whatever that contract was for that particular project, is no longer in play, that she's allowed to utilize her name. She's seeking a court ruling affirming her right to use the to use her name, and declaring her work does not infringe on the estate's trademark. So she wants the court to make it plain and simple. She's allowed to use her name, that this is her right to do so. She has the trademark on it. She's also seeking from the court confirmation that the use of her name would not infringe on Prince's estate to continue to promote his legacy, essentially. She also wants the estate to drop their own trademark application. So apparently, she's had her own trademark her trademark registered for the last 40 years, and now they have a trademark applications in play as we speak, trying to utilize the Apollonian name for Prince's estate. And she's saying, I want the court to rule that they must cease and desist trying to utilize the name, and that their trademark applications must be removed, essentially. Now, of course, this follows a similar dispute in 2022 when Prince's estate challenged Morris Day of the time, use of the time, which was resolved with a settlement allowing Morris Day to continue using the name. So this seems to be sort of par for course of what has been going on since Prince's unfortunate and timely death in 2016. And I think that, I as soon as I saw the case and saw it, I said, this is going to depend very much on who trademarked the name first. And it sounds like Apollonia trademarked the name first. She has been utilizing this name for 40 years. And in the 40 years that she's been using it, to her own admission, she says, well, Prince encouraged me to use it. It is her middle name. Imagine someone trying to trademark your name that you were born with, your actual given name. It's so odd. But they would have legs to stand on had she not already trademarked it. So she's already trademarked the name. She's trademarked it as an entertainment entity to use it for entertainment purposes, to sell goods, to sell her her artistry. So it's not like she trademarked it for a different purpose and that's what they're doing. No, she's trademarked it for the same purposes as in which they're trying to currently trademark it for. So it's really going to come down to who did it first. Sounds like she did it first. Prince's estate has not replied or responded to this lawsuit just yet. We'll stay on top of this to see what exactly, becomes of all of this. But my best guess is that Apollonia is going to walk away with her right to continue the use of her name, much like Morris Day of Morris Day and a Time, much like he walked away with the same rights when Prince's estate tried the same thing with him back in 2022, so we'll stay on top of that. We'll stay on top of the Little Nas X Bizarro news, but that's going to be it for us today. That's it for Casting Court TV. Thank you so much, guys. We'll catch you later on the next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and be well. All right, guys. Peace.